Council needs a makeover, a comprehensive reform.
Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the China Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories coming out of China and the region. Japan says 2 US nuclear-capable B-52 bombers flew over the Sea of Japan with 6 Japanese fighters in a show of force after recent Chinese and Russian military drills. Tokyo says both sides reaffirmed their resolve to deter any attempt to change the status quo by force. Clashes have erupted at multiple points along the border for a 4th straight day as Thailand and Cambodia await a call from President Trump, who says he can broker a ceasefire. The latest violence marks the most intense fighting since the 5-day battle in July. Ukraine's president says intelligence shows Russia and China are moving to intensify cooperation, including in the military-industrial sector. He says Russia is even ceding elements of its sovereignty to Beijing as their partnership deepens. A Reuters survey shows Japanese companies see strained relations with China as their top concern for 2026, with US trade policies close behind. Ties have worsened since PM Sonai Takaichi said a Chinese attack on Taiwan could prompt a Japanese military response. Mexico's Senate has approved tariff increases of up to 50% on imports from China and other Asian nations to boost local industry. Most affected products will face duties of around 35% starting in 2026, despite opposition from business groups and governments. South Korea's Oceans Minister Chung Jae-soo offers to resign, calling allegations he took illegal payments from the Unification Church completely false. He says he's stepping down to avoid hurting the government as prosecutors probe claims reported by local media. The United States criticizes China for allegedly aiming radar at Japanese military aircraft near Okinawa, an incident both sides dispute. Tensions were already high after Japan's Prime Minister made remarks about a possible Chinese attack on Taiwan. President Putin tells Indonesia's Prabowo that Moscow is pleased with their expanding military cooperation and ready to support Jakarta on nuclear energy. He also notes a small drop in Russian wheat exports to Indonesia this year. Okay, our top story of the hour. US nuclear capable B-52 bombers have flown over the Sea of Japan alongside Japanese fighter jets in a clear show of force. Tokyo says the drill comes just days after Chinese and Russian bombers carried out joint flights near Japan and South Korea. Japan's defense ministry says the exercise reaffirms the Allies' resolve to counter any attempt to change the status quo by force. It also follows Chinese aircraft carrier drills that forced Japan to scramble jets after they were reportedly targeted by radar beams. South Korea also launched fighters this week when Chinese and Russian aircraft entered its air defense zone. The latest tensions come as Prime Minister Sonai Takaichi's recent comments on a possible Chinese attack on Taiwan sparked a diplomatic clash with Beijing. China continues to claim the self-ruled island, which lies just over 100 kilometers from Japan. We're now joined by Dr. Asta Chadha. She is from Ritsumeikan University and an associate professor of international relations, joining us live from Kyoto in Japan. Dr. Chadha, as always, a pleasure. What is the message that the United States is sending by flying these B-52 bombers, nuclear-capable aircraft, with Japan so soon after these China-Russia joint flights?
Coming onto your channel to discuss this issue. I mean, for the United States, we were expecting that US would step in at some point and show both a show of force to, the other powers, which are Russia and China, because they conducted a joint activity, which was labeled as a show of force by Tokyo. So we were expecting something similar to happen, at least from the Japanese side, together with its allies in the region. And so the US-Japan counter show of force is, I would say, one message to the other powers in the region, including China and Russia, that Japan is not alone. And the fact that they deployed nuclear-capable B-52 strategic bombers were flown alongside the Japanese Air Self-Defense Force fighters, in a way shows that, US still has presence and still has commitment to Sea of Japan's security and the Japanese security. The second aspect of this is the fact that there were official statements from both Japan and the US reaffirming their strong resolve to prevent any unilateral attempt to change the status quo by force, which is clearly aimed at, China, but also Russia, which is trying to become this, through the China partnership, trying to become more visible in the Indo-Pacific. And the third aspect to this is obviously, which is sad, which is the fact that there is heightened tension. If this tit-for-tat military maneuvering is going to go on, we don't know how long this is going to go on, and what is the kind of message they're sending in the wider region to other countries like South Korea, Taiwan, to Southeast Asia, and to South Asia. Are they signaling collectively? When I say collectively, I'm talking about China, Russia, US, Japan. Do they want to signal that this is a time for military buildup? Or are they saying everyone needs to invest more in their credibility as defense partners, as powers in the Indo-Pacific? And lastly, I must mention this because, for Japan, for a long time since President Trump took office, there was this question about a US commitment to the Japanese security and East Asian security. So this show of force, I would say, solidifies this alliance further. Though this has been made, through statements several times, but this definitely enhances Japan's own defense posturing in the region.
Dr. Chatter, do you think these bombers' flights risk miscalculation, or are they a necessary deterrence given Moscow and Beijing's actions?
I mean, they were not exactly, I would say, risking any miscalculation, because remember, they were flying over Sea of Japan alongside the Japanese Air Self-Defense Force fighter jets. So there is less of a chance of miscalculation. But what is undeniable is the fact that from the US side, they were nuclear-capable strategic bombers. It does show to powers like China and Russia that not only is US capable of countering them or deterring their, aggression in the East Asian zone, but also the fact that Japan should not be seen as being left alone without nuclear capabilities, because it has the commitment and the alliance with the United States.
Dr. Charadha, do stay with us as we have further updates coming for our viewers. Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says China is taking further steps to deepen its cooperation with Russia, including in the military-industrial sector. His statement on platform X followed an assessment from Kiev's Foreign Intelligence Service. Zelensky also said there is a growing evidence of what he described as the de-sovereignation of parts of Russian territory in favor of China, driven by the use of resource-rich land and the sale of scarce Russian resources to Beijing. He added that partner intelligence agencies share similar assessments, and Ukraine says these developments raise wider security concerns, stressing that close coordination with key allies will be essential as these trends continue. Dr. Chatter, of course, China maintains that it is neutral in this war, however, keeping hold of those diplomatic ties visibly with Moscow. Does this signal that Beijing truly is neutral here?
I mean, you raised a very important question because the first sort of doubt, I would say, in the Western world goes towards China's claim of neutrality, not just, with regard to Indo-Pacific security, but also with regard to Russia-Ukraine crisis. Because depending, I mean, based on this intelligence that you mentioned that President Zelensky shared, this exacerbates mistrust between both the US and China with regard to the Chinese involvement in the conflict. The second aspect of this is, I mean, obviously there is a calculation from the Kiev side. When they talk about de-sovereignization, one must question, well, of course, China is collaborating very closely for investment, technology, political alignment, so on and so forth, and even military complex with Russia. But is it the first time that we are hearing about de-sovereignization? Because isn't that pretty much the complaint a lot of other states had with regard to Belt and Road Initiative in the first place? But given that we are talking about Russia, there are obviously implications for US-China relations in this. I mean, one clear one is that there would be more buildup of pressure on United States and allies to impose secondary sanctions. And this would not only need to be extended to Russia, but also to Chinese entities found to be aiding Russian military industrial complex. And the second aspect of this is the strategic challenge that the Western powers now face, because it was easy for them to sideline Russia or label Russia as an aggressor. But if you look at the latest security documents coming out of the United States, Russia seems to no longer be a threat. That goes very contrary to the US long-term commitment towards European security, whether it's or Euro-Atlantic security that it has for a long time maintained. And the third mixed signal here is, if China is that engaged in Russia-Ukraine war, maybe not overtly but covertly, would the West collectively want to impose sanctions on China? Would that impact their long-term major strategic goals that they want to achieve with regards to de-risking from China at the same time, but also engaging Beijing in supply chain security as well? So this is leading to this sort of a geopolitical bifurcation, and that seems to follow a larger trend that we are observing, wherein once again we are getting into the bloc politics, where US aligned democracies would be at some point would be forced to face off against China, Russia, and probably other parties that do enter into this anti-West sort of coalition.
Yes, it is indeed a fascinating topic. Dr. Chadha, as always, it's a pleasure to have you here on NewsX World. Thank you very much for taking the time and joining us. We now move on to our next story, and US President Donald Trump says that he is scheduling a phone call today with Thailand and Cambodia regarding the conflict between the two Southeast Asian nations. This comes as clashes between the two countries continue for a fourth day. Now, at least 15 people, including Thai soldiers and Cambodian civilians, have been killed in the latest hostilities, with more than 500 people having fled their border areas where jets, tanks and drones are waging battle. Trump has claimed that he will be able to get the two countries to stop fighting after his phone call. Let's take a listen in to the US president.
I was going to say that the Thailand and Cambodia, one of the 8 that I settled, they've been fighting for a long time. They've been fighting for a very long time, many, many, many decades. But I got along great with both. I found they were two great leaders, two great people, and I settled it once. I think I can do it pretty quickly. I think we're scheduling a phone call tomorrow.
Mr. President.
With Thailand.
On the Fed chair.
With Thailand, if just to answer Steve, with Thailand and Cambodia, I think I can get them to stop fighting. Who else can do that?
Okay, joining us now is Major General Gigi Davidi. He's an international relations and defense expert, joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General Davidi, for joining us here on NewsX World. Donald Trump, of course, claims that he's going to be able to stop this fighting after this scheduled phone call today. Given the scale of these renewed clashes, do you think that's realistic?
Well, firstly, Thomas, always a pleasure to be on the NewsX World. The issue is very contentious. President Trump always overstates his capability to bring about peace in those regions which are in state of conflict. But on the ground, that has not actually happened, and there are a number of other conflicts which he has tried to mediate, but they have not fructified. Well, as far as the Cambodia-Thai border is concerned, it's a contentious one because it has a colonial history and it has been demarcated not exactly on the geographic lines. So therefore, this contention of territorial claims by two sides has been there and a cause of tension. And as in July, there was clashes which almost lasted for a week, but then a ceasefire was brought in by the efforts of President Trump and also by Malaysia. But then it was only a band-aid solution because the major issue has not been addressed, and that is the territorial issue. And now, again, I think last Sunday, the clashes once again broke out because the ceasefire was very fragile. Now we need to understand two, three important issues. First and foremost, Thailand has better security forces, they have the air force, so they have the domination and therefore they have an aggressive or proactive attitude. Secondly, Thailand has repeatedly said that they are not interested in third party mediation. And also, Thailand Prime Minister has stated that the tariffs should not be mixed up with the border dispute. So the point is that while President Trump has expressed confidence that he can bring about this conflict to an end, but the point is that issues are very contentious and it doesn't appear to be that it will be resolved anytime soon because until the root cause is addressed, the root cause is the counter-territorial claim by the two sides. Thomas.
Yes, and of course, as you mentioned, the root causes of this conflict have not been solved. Do you think the US can influence both of these militaries in this conflict, or are Thailand and Cambodia driven mostly by, of course, domestic political pressures?
Yes, domestic political pressures are there because both the sides would not like to back off and they like to pursue their claims. But here comes the big power play. Well, as far as Thailand is concerned, it has very close relation with the USA, and Cambodia has very close relation with China. In fact, Chinese have a naval base in Reims. So these two powers also have a role to play, and not to forget the ASEAN, because ASEAN as a group also has high stakes. Because if the region is not stable, if there is a violence, then it affects the impacts the economies of all the ASEAN nations because they are highly trade and tourism dependent. But the point is, as far as the ASEAN are concerned, while they have a mechanism of consultation, building consensus, but they don't have the capability to reinforce what are the decisions are taken. And as far as China is concerned, they are the very silent watchers. They never come in directly, but they have certain amount of leverage. America has leverage too, but then the stand taken by the Thailand Prime Minister is very clear that they don't want third party, intervention or mediation, and also they don't want to mix up tariffs with the border dispute. So I don't know how far President Trump solve the problem. To me, it may again be one more ceasefire, but the problem will remain, and the ceasefire, even if it imposed, is going to be very fragile, and there are high chances that it will be violated again by either side. Thomas.
Yeah, and of course, this is entering its fourth day now. ASEAN is historically slow in responding to these military crises. Do you expect ASEAN to step in here at all?
No, ASEAN have made an effort. After all, Malaysia was involved in this last ceasefire along with President Trump. But then ASEAN itself doesn't have a very cogent approach to the conflict resolution because they have this system of or mechanism of consensus building or trying to garner the support of the other members to resolve the issue. But they have not been able to do much. You look at Myanmar, the crisis is still on, and Myanmar is part of the ASEAN, but they have not been able to bring about any kind of stable solution to even Myanmar. So the point is, ASEAN have a limitation. Limitation in this sense means they don't have a mechanism to reinforce even if the consensus is built, because that is where the ASEAN always have a very weak and a calibrated response, but they don't have a mechanism to enforce a decision that is taken, and that's why America has stepped in. America has leverage, but then again, as I said, The problem is deep rooted, and these problems cannot be stopped by band-aid ceasefire until you address the problem per se and bring in a peace agreement. But at this moment stand, neither ASEAN has the capability to enforce any decision, and also I think President Trump too has a limitation because the Thai line or Thai side is not prepared for third-party mediation or any compromise on the border issue. Thomas.
Yes, Major General Gigi Davidi, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's always a pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We now move on, and Mexico's Senate has approved significant tariff hikes on imports from China and several Asian nations, aiming to strengthen domestic industry and increase government revenue. With 76 votes in favour, lawmakers backed the new duties of up to 50% set to take effect in 2026 on products including autos, auto parts, textiles, plastics and steel from countries without trade deals with Mexico. The measure, softened from an earlier proposal, still affects around 1,400 tariff lines and is expected to generate $3.76 billion next year as Mexico works to reduce its fiscal deficit. Supporters say the move protects vulnerable local sectors and jobs, while critics warn consumers will ultimately bear the cost. The government insists the tariffs will boost Mexican competitiveness and strengthen supply chains rather than serve solely as a revenue tool. Now, in Myanmar, a deadly airstrike by the military junta on a hospital has killed at least 31 people and left 68 others injured. The attack took place in Muruk-u, a town in western Rakhine state, and comes amid escalating aerial assaults targeting pro-democracy forces. The military's airstrikes have intensified since the 2021 coup, which overthrew the democratically elected government. Aid workers fear the death toll could rise further. This tragedy follows a recent airstrike on a tea shop in Sagaging, which killed 18 civilians. The violence continues as Myanmar's civil war rages on. Now, Japan is reeling from a series of powerful earthquakes this week. A quake struck off the east coast of Japan's Honshu Island. The tremor, initially recorded as a 6.5 magnitude, was later revised to 5.7. It hit at a depth of 31 kilometers, according to the European Mediterranean Seismological Center. While there are no immediate reports of damage or casualties, authorities are closely monitoring the situation. Earlier this week, a devastating 7.5 magnitude earthquake on the 8th of December injured at least 30 people, forced evacuations and left thousands without power. The epicenter was just off the coast of Aomori, with tsunami warnings briefly issued and waves reaching 70 centimeters. Authorities have warned of more aftershocks in the coming days, while Japan's nuclear plants have been unaffected and rescue operations are now underway. The country remains on high alert, however. And that's all that we have time for today on the China Report. Keep watching NewsX World for more international updates.